Welcome back, Guardians. And today we're going to look back once again at, this time it's going to be PvP in general. So it's pretty much the history of Destiny PvP, which has been a long, winding road. It's had its ups, it's had its downs, it's had some pretty crazy guns that have been super OP, which made you not want to play in the Crucible. I've broken it down into about 6 eras of Destiny PvP. You can add one if you want, I'm pretty sure there's some in between, but these are the major ones that I figure. Going in chronological order, the first era, which was just auto rifles. It was when people just got the game, first couple of weeks, people were just going with their natural instinct with first-person shooters and using an auto rifle. Never use a pulse rifle, ever, during this time. Don't do it. It was really bad. And also for secondaries, fusion rifles were the way to go. They were unstoppable. They were pretty crazy. They were one-shots and the firing time for them were extremely low. It was just a great time to use fusion rifles. Depending if you were the person that used them. If you didn't, then you hated them, because some people despised them with a great passion. Probably even more than people do now with thorns. Also, during this era, I want to say that hand cannons were good, but because no one had last word and thorn was terrible, no one used them. The last word was so rare, no one thought it was even out there. People knew of a hand cannon, a handful of people had them. Also during this time, the Vex Mythoclast was a legend, and it was also the most OP gun in the history of any PvP game ever. But that was quickly laid to rest. Also, throughout all 6 eras, snipers never changed. They are the one true gun of Destiny. And rocket launchers and machine guns, but that's heavy ammo. And then this ushered in the second age with the hand cannons. Last word in Hawkmoon, no thorn still, really bad. This is also the time where fusion rifles slowly got nerfed and shotguns were sort of buffed. In fact, they might have been more buffed than they are now, even though shotguns became a little bit OP back then. Also, auto rifles were completely nerfed to the point where, what's the point of using them? Pulse rifles and scout rifles were never even an option in your mind. You never thought about it. It was just awful. They were PvE guns only. Never use them. So this was around a time where people were a high enough level to do the Nightfalls and actually obtain these guns, because getting them from the Crucible still extremely rare. Nightfall was actually something to do. You would genuinely get an exotic, or at least one person in your fire team. This might have been one of my favorite eras, the second era, or I'm just gonna call it the last word era, because I love the last word. It was so fun to use. This was around the time I started really hardcore doing Destiny videos, and I have a lot of footage of that. It was just a 1, 2, sometimes 3-shot headshot. Hawkmoon was like almost a 1-shot headshot, which was pretty intense. Of course, that would also piss people off, so maybe it's not your favorite. On to the third era, which I don't really know what to classify it as. This were when the hand cannons were slowly nerfed, but the thorn, bad juju were buffed. They weren't buffed enough. Fusion rifles at this time were obsolete, and they will stay that way forever. Fusion rifles never get any better. They've always been that way since late 2014, Dark Below type era. This was a time of equality, so I might want to call it the peacetime era. This is when there was actual equality within the Crucible. Auto rifles were sort of buffed, and the thorn wasn't realized to be the superior weapon yet. If you saw a thorn and you realized that it was really good, that's when the chain goes on and people start using it more and more because they realize it's better. But this wasn't that time. People weren't already realizing that. They were just going back to auto rifles. Some people were using bad juju. I don't know why. Shotguns still running amok. Snipers were still the same. Just an all-around good time. And then, this is maybe your favorite era, maybe your least. This was around the time of Trials, and this was the Thorn era. Shotguns, still the same. Snipers, never changed. Fusion rifles, what are fusion rifles? During the first couple games of Trials of Osiris, you would see just Thorn. I will admit, I did use the Thorn. It was a good gun. It killed people fast. That's why you use it. Sure, I jumped on the bandwagon, but I wanted to win, I wanted to go flawless. If you went flawless without the Thorn, props to you. A lot of respect. But I was in dire need of some flawless. I just remember one shotgun deeply embedded in my mind, and that was the Fellwinter's Lie. People that had that just wrecked with it. I don't know, it had such extreme range, and when you aimed in, depending on the perks you have, of course, you would aim in, and that would reduce the spread, and that would result in pretty much just a slug shot going directly in your chest and killing you, which is bullshit. And it stayed like this for a while. This might have been one of the longest eras, the Thorn era, It just never changed. And then the House of Wolves DLC kind of killed off Destiny. It made it so quiet. Not a lot of people played it. You might have gone on a couple raids once in a while. Skolas was... people figured him out too easily. And then the Taken King came out. This is where I came back. Some of you might still be playing. Some of you might also just coming back. But this was the pulse rifle era. I don't remember when it started. I don't remember how. I just remember two guns being extremely good. This was Red Death and Hawksaw. Also bad juju. I just remember mostly seeing Red Death. Hard Light was also buffed, but no one seemed to care. No one still cares. If you use it, I'm not blaming you. It's not a bad gun. It's got a couple buffs, and it needs some love. Hardcore Thorn fans still lingered. That's true. And the last word was only a mythical weapon talked in the whispers about its glory in the Crucible a long time ago. Time long forgotten by the Guardians. If you talk to Guardians talking about the last word, they might tell you that it was a great weapon. They must sound like an elderly man to you. Also, if you talk even further back to people that used the Vex Mythoclast way back in the first era, that was a time to be alive. Auto rifles were a little bit better, like I said, Hard Light, and also Necrochasm. Also during this time, you might have been playing in the Crucible, or you might have been doing all the Taken King missions, because the Taken King was a great DLC. It had a lot to offer, it had a lot of cutscenes, some humor with Cade 6, and a ton of stuff to do in the PvE, like the raid, and all the missions to do, all the swords, all the gradual exotics, which was kind of a way to string it out now that looking back at it. Wasn't that bad. Like Sleeper Stimulant, also with the 3 guns that they give you for reaching rank 3 in the Gunsmith. And this brings us to the current era of Destiny PvP. Before I get into the era, you probably can already guess it, I want to say that I may say this is the current era, but I've just brought you through all the changes within Destiny. A rough overview. I'm not going to say I didn't skip any, but within time, this will be obsolete, just like fusion rifles, this entire list. It'll be the history. I might update it. I have no idea. Only time will tell, and with the next DLC coming out this spring 2016, I can only agree that with this new update, this current era might come to an end. That's the era of the scout rifle, specifically the Meta multi-tool. A lot of people are using that, especially still in trials. If you have a 320 Meta multi-tool, pretty easy to get kills. You can also go ahead and comment your favorite scout rifle, because I know there's a couple other scout rifles out there that are on par with it, maybe a little bit better for you. I know there's this one that, I know perks can vary, but there was this one gun that my fire team, when I was doing the raid, they were just fangirling over. It had Firefly on it. They both had the same gun. They were just going crazy for it. I don't quite remember what it was. Fusion rifles, I can't even talk about fusion rifles. No one uses them in general. If you're a Warlock, you had to Lilac. Sniper rifles, you're the real MVP. You never changed. Shotguns had their ups and downs at this point in time. Right now, you can probably say they're in the middle. They're not the worst they've been, or best if you use them, and they're also not the weakest. You can use an auto rifle if you really, really want to. Zalo Supercell's not that bad to use. I've seen it been used. And one gun that I think in this era would probably dominate, there's only one out there, and that's the Fate of All Fools. Would love to see that in action right now, because I think it would probably be in its prime. The only thing left to do is to wait for Bungo to release another update, changing Destiny PvP, allowing for another gun to take its rightful place at the throne of OP guns, the long line, be the successor of the Meta multi-tool. Also, you can comment down below saying what your favorite era was during the Crucible, whether it was the Last Word era, the first era where everything was still just crazy. People were using auto rifles because that's the only thing they knew to be good. Was it the Thorn era, I dare say. But anyways, that's been it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later, Guardians.